This week we are talking about retouching, and specifically retouching faces. Last week, in the past couple of weeks when we've talked about other types of retouching, we've used the clone stamp tool, which pretty much works like making a selection and copying and pasting. Although with the clone stamp tool, I could choose to clone in at a lower opacity or lower my flow, but it pretty much takes whatever I've set as my source and it reproduces it. So this week we're going to look at another group of selection tools, the ones over here above the clone stamp tool. And these tools appear to work in the same way, but then after you've let go of your mouse, there's a slight difference, which is that they will blend with the area underneath. So for example, I'm going to start with the top one, the spot healing brush. The spot healing brush is a tool you want to use to retouch something that is just a single spot, something that's small. And all I need to do is go over the spot and make sure that the radius of my brush is a little bit larger than the area I'm trying to retouch, and click. And what Photoshop did was it simply sampled the area that was inside the radius of my brush that seemed to be darker, and it blended it with the pixels outside of that darker area. So this is a great tool for just going and clicking and retouching small little spots. I'm just going to create a new image here. Make it a little smaller than that so you can see a demonstration of what these retouching tools do. I'm going to fill it with a color, Alt Backspace, and then Control D. So if I took my clone stamp tool and I set my source, Alt here, and I went over here, it's just going to paint it in 100%, as I was saying before. Basically copies and pastes. But now I'm going to take the second tool, the healing brush tool, which works in the same way, meaning I'm going to set my source. I'm going to come over here and hold the Alt key down, and then come down here, and it seems to be doing the same thing, but then when I let go, you can see how it blended with the background. So with the first brush here, the spot healing one, you don't have to set the source. I'll go back to my face image. You just simply click over the spot, and just for you to know though, that's what it's doing, is it is sampling, blending with the pixels around it. But if you have a larger area, you don't want to do that by going spot, 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 click, 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 because you're going to get a bunch of circles. So let's say I have an area, like I'm going to try to touch up the mole on her nose. I'm going to set my source, moving down here, holding the Alt key down, and I get that bullseye just like I did with the clone stamp tool. And I'm going to move it over, make my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to just gently paint in over. And as you can see, it doesn't look very good. It looks like I've used the clone stamp tool. And then when I let go, it blends. So I'm going to go over to this image here. The second one here that I'm talking about, this healing brush tool, is great for larger sections. So I'm going to zoom in here. If, for example, I want to try to soften the line underneath here, I want to use the regular healing brush tool. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned is how to do this non-destructively. So I'm going to go over to my layers panel, and I'm going to create a new blank layer, and this is the way I want you to work for your projects. And just like with the clone stamp tool, I'm going to go up to the options bar, and where it says sample, I'm going to choose either current and below or all layers. And that's going to allow me to work from a new layer, but to sample from the layer that's underneath. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down and go and sample another part of the skin underneath and let go, and you can see how it blends. And just like with cloning, you're going to want to go and to resample over and over again as you're doing your retouching. So I'll just move up here, and if I want to sort of soften the lines up here, I'm just going to go to the good skin tone right underneath it and sort of continue following along. If I go back over here, and I choose that spot healing brush, I can do the same thing. I just have to create a new layer. So I'm going to start this image over from the beginning, and I'm going to create a new blank layer, go up to the options bar and make sure sample all layers is selected, and now I can do my edits non-destructively. Okay, so that's how I would like you to work. Let's continue talking about the tools here. I'm going to skip the content tool, come back to that one. The next one is the patch tool. And the patch tool is going to work when it's a great tool if you have a larger section. So I'm going to make a selection of this area here that I want to have retouched. I select it just like I'm using this tool, but I'm using it like it's the lasso tool. I just click and drag around. Now I'm going to put my mouse inside, and this tool, sorry about that, this is the one tool that will not work non-destructively. I need to be on my layer 1. So I'm going to put my mouse inside that selection, and I'm dragging it out. And what I'm doing is sort of sampling how another part of skin tone would look in there. So just as an extreme, you could see if I'm moving over here, it's showing me how the lip would look in there. So I want to find a good skin tone, and I'm going to let go, and then it's going to blend. And I do Control D to get rid of that. Okay, so I'll go back to my new blank layer. If I continue on here, I have the Content Aware Move tool. And this tool, before I talk about this, I just want to talk about Content Aware. And here I'm going to jump over to another image I have, the Roadkill image, and show you what Content Aware is. Content Aware is when I make a selection of a part that I want to get rid of in my image, and I'm going to use the Fill option that's on Content Aware, and I'm going to have Photoshop basically blend from the areas around it and use the areas around it, its content, to fill what I've selected. So I'll go through those steps. I'm going to take the lasso tool, and I do have a feather of 10 pixels on, and I'm going to make a selection outside, just a little bit outside this book. I don't want it to be too close, and I don't want it to be too far away. I want Photoshop to be able to get kind of a sense of what the content is like outside of my selection. And now I'm going to right click and choose Fill. Make sure it says Content Aware and click OK. And it does its best job at trying to get rid of the area inside. So let me try that again. I think my selection over here wasn't very good. I'll go through those steps again. So I'm going to take the lasso area and see if I can get a better one this time. And I'm going to move out a little bit further this time from my pages. Move it all the way around. And right click, Fill, make sure it's on Content Aware, and choose OK. Control D. So it does a pretty good job, not a perfect job, and at this point I could continue to do perhaps some cloning, put it on a new layer, and clone some of the texture that's from the road up here down onto here. And this would be kind of a faster place, make sure I'm on all layers, faster place to start from than if I had to go and get rid of the book completely from the start. Just continue on here. And then I'd want to do a little cloning to get rid of the shadow over there. So kind of depending on the image, sometimes it does an excellent job, sometimes it just kind of helps set you up, and then you want to do a little bit of retouching afterwards. So that's what Content Aware is. Content Aware is when you have a selection and you ask Photoshop to fill it with the contents around it. So now I'm going to go back over, and I'm actually going to take this other image, the Chicago image, and we'll talk about that tool, the Content Aware Move tool. So the Content Aware Move tool, I'm going to make a selection of a part of my image that I want to move. And what Photoshop is going to do is it's going to erase it from where it was originally. So it's going to fill it with its surroundings. And then when I move it to a new area, it's going to try to blend it. So I'm going to move it over here. I didn't do a perfect selection. I should have made that a little stronger. And Control D. And you can see how it just sort of filled the area that the building used to be with the content below it, or the content around it, sorry, and it's blended that in when I put it into the new area. So the edge around it is blended in with the content around it. So that's what the Content Fill tool does. So the red eye tool, I'm going to have to open up another image here to get to be able to practice the red eye. We'll take this red eye practice tool, practice image, and I'm going to zoom in. And the red eye tool works pretty much just like you would imagine. I actually really like to zoom in quite a bit. I do have some options up here in the options bar. I can change the pupil size if it's taking too large of a pupil, and I can also reduce the darken amount. So I just kind of click into that image and and it gets rid of the red eye. And sometimes you have to click a couple of times, but it does a pretty good job. So while we're here talking about these tools, I also want to talk about the color replacement tool, which is found embedded with the paintbrush tool. And I'm going to talk about this in sequence because for a long time Photoshop didn't have a red eye tool. Instead, to get rid of red eye, you would use the color replacement tool. So I just want to show you what that tool is. It works in a similar way to these other retouching tools that we've been working with, in the sense that I can sample an area. Okay, so I'm going to sample the pink of her shirt, for example, if I want to make her hair look pink. And now I'm going to paint over her hair. And I just wanted to kind of point this tool out. Sometimes this can be a really useful tool. What the color replacement tool does versus the paint tool is, as I'm painting, it's keeping the integrity of the tones underneath. So the darker areas are becoming a dark pink, and the light areas are becoming a light pink. So that's how Photoshop used to work with the red eye tool. And you probably don't want to use it for the red eye tool anymore because the actual red eye tool works very well. But it might be a useful technique in your retouching if you want to change the color of someone's hair or change the color of the clothes. It works a lot better than the regular paintbrush. So again, with this tool, if for example I sampled a dark color, maybe like this dark gray, and I come over here, oh sorry, I was on the wrong tool. I'm going to undo that and go back over to my color replacement tool, make my brush a lot smaller, and I'm going to sample this dark gray. And now when I paint over, sorry, I keep holding the Alt key down. When I paint over all of those red pixels, it's keeping their integrity and it's just changing their tone. So the white will never become painted. It's always going to stay white, but the highlights, the light red, become this darker gray, and the darker ones become, sorry, the light pinks become the lighter pinks, and the darker ones become the darker. Zoom out, and we can sort of see how that looks in comparison to what I was doing before using the red eye tool. So some people find that to have a little bit more of a natural look, but you're welcome to go ahead and just use that red eye tool. It's going to kind of make it very black. Okay, so that covers working with all of these different retouching tools for this week.